Hello everybody, welcome to the first episode of the Style Stories. You're probably wondering, but who is she? And that's exactly where we are today, and I'm going to tell you about who I am. You're going to get to know me just a little. There's a question I get asked often. It's not the usual, how are you? Or is everything okay at home? No, it's always the same. Who are you? It seems like a simple question, right? But it isn't. Especially if your name is Yasmin Zehra Naqvi. The truth is, it's never been just one thing, and the definitions have always felt too limiting for me. Some people know me just as a designer, others as a creative, others still think I'm a consultant, but I'm far more than that. I'm someone who's lived in fashion from the inside, and it's precisely from this journey that I want to start. I didn't want to give you a resume or a linear autobiography of who I am and where I come from, because my story isn't linear. I want to share it through stories, small windows into experiences, insights, and moments when I discovered who I truly am. We live in a world that loves tidy narratives, a clear beginning, steady growth, recognizable success. Everything normal without creating disruption or discomfort. But fashion, real fashion, is never calm. And trust me, neither am I. When I was a teenager back in London, I already knew I wanted to work in the creative industry. Not in a dramatic, tortured, artistic kind of way, but casually, slightly chaotically. We're very British. Okay, I'm not going to do anything boring. And it was difficult to do anything boring with a mixed background, considering my father was from India, Pakistan, and my mother was Scottish. So, fashion, yes, but not the way people imagine it. I didn't grow up dreaming of sketching ball gowns or pretending to be couture genius. I didn't want to just make clothes. That idea always felt a little bit too small for me, too neat, too polite. I was interested in systems, in worlds, in how things worked and why they looked the way they did, and the machines behind the magic that made it work. I didn't have the words to describe it. I only knew one thing. I wanted to be a creative, but real and not fake. Not shining on the outside, chaotic on the inside. And I definitely didn't want to wear all black and pretend to be miserable for credibility, even though I have to confess, I do wear a lot of black these days. Once upon a time, when it came down to making choices of where I was going to study, and that was a long time ago, I was a little bit indecisive and really didn't know what to do. But like any slightly chaotic, instinctive-driven teenager would do, I chose my future on a whim. Not on a spreadsheet, not on a 5-year plan, and not on a vision board, just a whim. All my friends were obsessed with the London colleges. It was Vivian Westwood days, so there were big names around, big reputations and big attitudes. I visited them, and well, they were a bit scruffy, romantic maybe, artistically chaotic, but also a bit like no one had cleaned the place since 1987. Everything felt performative, very, look at me, I'm a creative, noise and image. In the end, what happened? Destiny would have it, I ended up in Nottingham. I walked into the machine rooms in the university and thought, wow, this is a bit different. Everything looks very organised. It wasn't the studios, it wasn't the students, it wasn't the runway dreams. It was the machines. Big, serious industrial beasts. Nottingham was once upon a time the industrial centre of the fashion business in England. The hum rather than the sparkle. Machines that belonged to factories, not fantasies. And I thought, wow, this sounds interesting. Not beautiful, not glamorous, but definitely very interesting. So I chose Nottingham Trent University. Also, the other thing that was really important, it was an hour and a half by train from London, so meant you could go home for the weekend and party. But it wasn't just a dream, because it was prestige, because I like the machines. They say everything about me. I ended up choosing the fashion and knitwear course because it was a 4-year course with 2 placements abroad. I thought, okay, that sounds fun. Remembering I'd never completed a sweater in my life. Never mind. But the idea of all those machines, all those systems, all the structure fascinated me. My focus shifted from fashion looks to the process. The rhythm of production, the logic of systems, the strange poetry of repetition. Not romantic, I know. Very satisfying. Seeing how one small decision could affect 10 others. Understanding that design isn't just about taste, it's about thinking. And then I realised something very important. It wasn't just the love of clothes. I was in love with how things are made, and fashion was just the right language to express what I had in my mind at the time. The famous industrial placement. The first one was in London with Marks and Spencer. That was a bit boring, but I did learn a lot too. The second one in Italy. The dream come true. In my head, it was a cinematic sun, espresso, beautiful people, romantic ideas, and I thought this was going to be fantastic. And effortlessly becoming European and chic, all in one. Reality? Well, when I got off the plane in Venice, at the airport, I was literally whisked away, not gently guided, not romantically transported, but whisked away up into the hills to a little place called Valdagno. Valdagno on the rocks, just behind Vicenza. Another world. Green hills, silence, factories, mountains. And the roads where it seemed like people were ready to help you, but you really had to help yourself. And just as I was starting to understand and process the cultural shock, language shock, the landscape shock, came the next surprise. You're not doing women's wear. You're doing menswear. Teenage me, fresh from London, up in the Italian hills in an industrial environment, in menswear, with machines I didn't know, a language I didn't speak. I did speak a bit of French, thank God. Welcome to fashion, darling. Everything was different. How people worked, how they spoke, how they moved, how they understood hierarchy at the time too. Italy didn't care about my age. Italy didn't care about my nationality. It didn't care about my confusion. It did care about production, style, and getting the property out. Quality, structure, doing things properly. And then something clicked. This wasn't the fashion image. This was fashion as an infrastructure. Engineering, culture, and identity. As economy, as power. So Yasmin arrived in Italy, Valdagno, Marzotto, big industry. It was a family, and this was going to be my real school. The place where fashion stopped being a dream and started being a profession. And I can assure you, I learnt a lot. From there, my career became a continuous journey. I worked in different countries, with different cultures, production systems, and learned something fundamental. The way we dress always reflects the way we think, produce, and live. Fashion is never just aesthetics. It's not just about a nice skirt you pick up at the store. Fashion is structure, it's power, it's choice. A sharp sword that can be, if it's handled wisely, can hurt more than a superficial, you look good. I didn't learn this all overnight. I've been in the business 30 years now, immersed in the industry. I've worked on the inside of the fashion system. I've worked with international brands. I don't stand on the sidelines, and I don't just observe, I'm a doer. I like being on the inside of the magnificent machine that's fashion. Only from within do you stop looking at the images superficially and start looking at what we're really talking about, the business. You start to see what's behind them, compromises, tensions, decisions made far from the spotlight, the frenzy and the anxiety of the seasons. The importance of materials. A fabric is not just a fabric. It's a supply chain. It's people, responsibility and story. And the beauty of it all can be felt like stepping into Oz. Wondrous, magical, but also disorientating, because really working inside the system makes you ask uncomfortable questions. So why do we produce like that? For whom? And at what cost? Remember, we're in the fashion business. This isn't art for art's sake. Questions that aren't always convenient, especially today. Everybody talks about change, sustainability, innovation, new models, but often change is exploited as a trend, added to a press release to make it seem credible, centralised in the capsule collection to make it appear cooler. But that isn't the real change. As we've seen, real change is slow. It takes time, and its calm style hides the complexity underneath, and sometimes the discomfort, because change, as we all know, isn't easy, especially in the fashion business, even though we're really quick to. I'm not interested in surface change. I'm interested in change as a daily practice. Each of us must become more changeable. We complain, but act little. Now's the moment. The moment to wake up, to leave the comfort zone, and to become true agents of change. It doesn't mean having all the answers or perfect solutions. It means continuing to act and to ask questions without getting stuck in what we already know. These are complex times and change is scary. Anyone who's moved from magnificent London to a new country with a new language and a new way of living can tell you that. But look at where I am now. Fear is necessary because we're all human, but it all has to be faced, embraced, with your head held high. And all this has led me to create this podcast because the fashion world needs it. We need to look behind the scenes and see what's going on. Too many people stop at the surface. So, with the Style Stories, we're going to go beyond the common image and we're going to go behind the scenes. We're going to be talking to industrial specialists, people in the business, processes, transformations, innovation, and we will reveal what fashion hides, what you really want to see if you want to live it, and we analyse what happens before and after the shows, the consequences, the gossip, and the nightmares it leaves behind. I don't glorify fashion. I don't celebrate it. You can if you want to. That's up to you, if you have a critical sense. Here, what I want to do is to help you understand, to provoke new questions, and not give definitive answers. So, who am I? You'll never really know. Just kidding. I'm someone who has never really stopped questioning the system she works in. Someone who believes in fashion that still matters, but only if it can change and have the courage to transform. And this podcast, The Style Stories, is my way of starting the conversation with you. So join us for our next episode of The Style Stories. We'll explore dreams, materials, fabrics, because fashion doesn't start with a click. I'm Yasmin Naqvi, and this is Style Icon Stories.